In the early 1930s, Germany faced a severe economic and political crisis. High inflation and unemployment, combined with disappointment over the Treaty of Versailles following World War I, created fertile ground for extremist movements. The National Socialist German Workers' Party, under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, exploited this situation to gain public support. Through aggressive propaganda, nationalist rhetoric, and promises to restore Germany's glory, the Nazis successfully won a series of elections. The peak came in January 1933, when Hitler was appointed as Chancellor of Germany. Not long after, he solidified his grip on power by dissolving parliamentary democracy and enacting the Enabling Act of 1933, which granted him full legislative authority without parliamentary oversight. As Führer, Hitler transformed Germany from a democratic republic into a militaristic totalitarian state. All democratic institutions were silenced. Political opponents from communists, social democrats, to civil society figures were arrested or eliminated. The Nazi regime made anti-Semitic racist ideology the foundation of the state. They glorified the Aryan race and accused Jews and other minorities of being the root cause of Germany's decline. Either victory of the Aryan or annihilation of the Aryan and the victory of the Jew, Hitler said in a speech in 1922. Under Hitler's control, Germany pursued aggressive expansion. On September 1, 1939, Nazi troops invaded Poland, triggering the outbreak of World War II in Europe. In a short time, Germany conquered most of continental Europe. Hitler ruled absolutely during the war, while launching the Lebensraum policy to expand territory for the superior German race. Nazi military campaigns were accompanied by terror against civilians. During the war, Hitler's regime arrested and executed millions of people. One of the main instruments of Nazi terror was the concentration camps. Shortly after coming to power in 1933, the Nazis established the Dachau concentration camp near Munich as a detention facility for political opponents. This camp system was then expanded throughout Nazi-occupied territories. During World War II, the camp network was enlarged to include forced labor camps, transit camps, and mass extermination camps, such as Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor. These camps became sites of unimaginable crimes against humanity. Prisoners were tortured, forced into heavy labor without adequate food, subjected to medical experiments, and systematically slaughtered. One person responsible for the deplorable conditions of the camp prisoners was Georg Schallermair. He was an example of a Nazi regime executor who played a direct role in the brutality at the concentration camps. Georg Schallermair was born on December 29, 1894, in Hebertshausen. When World War II broke out, Schallermair initially served in the regular German army. Until around 1944, he was still on duty as a Wehrmacht soldier before being transferred to the Waffen-SS, the military wing of the Nazi elite force, the SS, during the final stages of the war. From August 1944 until the war ended in May 1945, Georg Schallermair served as Rapportführer at the main Mühldorf camp. This position made him one of the most influential SS officials at the daily camp level, right below the camp commander. As Rapportführer, Schallermair was responsible for overseeing the daily roll calls of prisoners, controlling prisoner lists, and enforcing discipline and camp regulations. He worked under Camp Commander SS Oberführer Walter Adolf Langleist, who led the entire Mühldorf complex. At the Mühldorf camp, Schallermair held a central role in the daily lives of the prisoners and shared responsibility for their suffering. Based on post-war testimonies, Schallermair was described as a brutal executioner who did not hesitate to abuse prisoners. His main duty was indeed to ensure that prisoners were fully present and orderly during roll calls, but Schallermair went beyond that role by committing extreme acts of violence. According to historical records, Georg Schallermair was personally involved in the murder of prisoners. He was reported to frequently beat prisoners brutally, even to death. Eyewitnesses, consisting of former Mühldorf prisoners, testified that Schallermair often roamed the camp looking for reasons to physically punish prisoners. Beatings with clubs and kicks were everyday occurrences. Not only did he commit direct murders, but Schallermair was also involved in the desecration of prisoners' corpses. One specific accusation later leveled against him was that he ordered the extraction of gold teeth from the bodies of dead prisoners. This action demonstrated how systematic and cold the treatment of prisoners was, even after death. Their bodies were still considered a valuable source of loot for the Nazis. It is recorded that out of 300 prisoners sent to the Mühldorf camp in the fall of 1944, only 72 were still alive 4 months later. In other words, the mortality rate at the Mühldorf camp was extremely high, and Schallermair as Rapportführer contributed significantly to that situation. But in the spring of 1945, Nazi Germany was on the brink of defeat. Allied forces broke into German territory from the west and east. In this desperate situation, the SS attempted to erase traces of their crimes by destroying documents and evacuating camp prisoners as far as possible from Allied reach. At the Mühldorf complex, in late April 1945, SS guards forced thousands of prisoners on forced marches and loaded some onto open train cars headed toward the Alps, in what later became known as the Mühldorf Death Train. However, on May 8, 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered unconditionally. Millions of Nazi war criminals were scattered. Some died on the battlefield, some fled or went into hiding, but many were successfully captured by the Allies. Georg Schallermair was among the perpetrators who were secured after the war. Immediately after the war, the Allies were determined to enforce justice for Nazi atrocities. In addition to the Nuremberg trials, which prosecuted the main Nazi leaders, the U.S. military also held a series of Dachau trials to prosecute mid- and low-level war criminals, especially those associated with concentration camps. On September 18, 1947, at the American Military Tribunal in Dachau, Georg Schallermair began to be tried on charges of war crimes related to the Mühldorf camp. In the trial, prosecutors presented strong evidence of Schallermair's involvement in mass crimes at the Mühldorf camp. Schallermair was charged with war crimes against civilian prisoners, including torture, murder, and inhumane treatment. During the trial, Schallermair again denied having intentionally killed anyone. Schallermair tried to deny the accusations by claiming that he only punished serious violations of camp rules to maintain discipline, and denied that his actions caused prisoner deaths. Regarding the extraction of gold teeth, he argued that he was only carrying out emergency orders from superiors in the SS office, handling medical and sanitation services at the camp. But in the end, on September 23, 1947, the American Military Tribunal in Dachau handed down a guilty verdict against Georg Schallermair. He was found proven to have committed war crimes in the form of abuse and murder of concentration camp prisoners. The death penalty by hanging was imposed as punishment for his actions. After the verdict was issued, Schallermair was placed in Landsberg prison in Bavaria to await execution. However, the execution process was not carried out immediately. Relations between the Western Allies and the newly formed West Germany became increasingly important amid the onset of the Cold War. The West German government, public figures, and the Church lobbied for the death sentences of Nazi perpetrators to be reviewed. Moreover, West Germany's 1949 Basic Law had abolished the death penalty, so executing convicts in the 1950s was seen as contrary to the spirit of the new era. Nevertheless, General Thomas T. Handy firmly confirmed that the hanging sentence for Schallermair must be carried out, on the grounds that Schallermair was responsible for the deaths and suffering of many people. Thus, on June 7, 1951, at Landsberg am Lech prison, Schallermair, along with 6 other Nazi war criminals, was taken from the death row cells. Georg Schallermair was executed by hanging at the age of 56.